Hi everyone, my name is Herkeph and welcome back to the BareBones hardcore world, the world where we have imposed a bunch of rules in hopes of crippling me rather severely. In our last episode, we built a weird mix between a barn and a greenhouse, which we decided to name a bobarg. And in said bobarg, we planted a bunch of crops in an attempt to avoid the rather underwhelming, stupid, and embarrassing death of starvation. We also made a tiny bit of progress in terms of getting ourselves some golden apples, so that we could recover from my expectedly many dire situations I'll put myself in. However, even though we did manage to get our hands on a few, we were still rather far off from having enough for me to feel reasonably safe. So our first priority in this episode will be to get our slimy and greedy hands on even more gold. I therefore started us off by going down to our mine, which had yielded us barely any gold, as I apparently thought it would be nice to waste a bunch of time for absolutely no reason. But after a while of accomplishing about as much as an average day in my real life, I went off exploring, as that strategy actually worked for us in our last episode. I decided to venture a bit further, as I had decided to go in the same direction as last time, as we would otherwise just run into the same stuff we did before. I have absolutely no idea why I decided to go in the exact same direction, as we could have kept a bit closer to base if we didn't. But if you've watched my other content, you're most likely not particularly shocked by this rather questionable decision. But as I was exploring, I found myself in a savannah where I found a village which was very epic. So I inflicted a healthy amount of criminality upon them by stealing their stockpile of food and the employment of 2 of their civilians. I then continued our journey until I found yet another village, but in a desert, which I subjected to the exact same treatment. But this one was a bit more profitable, as it had a desert temple as well as a mesa right next to it, which I broke into and stole all of its contents. However, the owners of the property I had broken into were a bit cheap, as I didn't find anything useful apart from a few saddles. But the main find was the mesa, so I scuttled my way over to it in a gleeful, greedy and gluttonous manner in hopes of getting my hands on enough gold to make me feel slightly more safe during my future escapades. So I slid myself into an inviting looking crevasse and got started collecting the precious gold. But even though the previously mentioned crack looked so inviting, it rather quickly revealed its more aggressive side, which was a less pleasant experience than what I had initially expected from it. And this was a theme that seemed to continue for the rest of the cave. So I decided to deploy the brave and heroic strategy of strip mining in hopes of not getting harassed. I continued this for about 30 minutes and ended up with almost 1.5 stack, which was the kind of riches I was in desperate need of. So I made my way home and started smelting our newly acquired wealth and went off with the intention of harassing a horse until it loves me. And unlike the times I've tried utilizing this strategy in real life, this actually worked. So I made my way home with my newly acquired, mighty steed that was actually surprisingly fast. I then shoved him into a hole next to our house and crafted a bunch of golden apples. At this point, we had successfully reached day 100, meaning that we had now unlocked the Nether. This meant that we could now look for a Nether fortress and grab Nether wart along with a couple blaze rods to start making potions. The main potions I was after were regeneration potions, as that would be rather helpful and would mean that we wouldn't have to rely on golden apples to regain health anymore. And the even more important one was the invisibility potions, as that would mean that we wouldn't constantly get harassed by every mob we come across, which would hopefully increase the odds of us not getting completely annihilated out of nowhere. So I rode my mighty steed to a nearby lava pool, where we had previously constructed a nether portal and went through. And just as I had made it to the other side of the portal, I immediately got harassed by a moaning cloud, making less than appropriate sounds. Needless to say, this wasn't quite the start I had hoped for, and just to add insult to injury, we had spawned right next to a soul sand valley, meaning that there was a possibility that we'd have to deal with skeletons. This was rather problematic, as we're not allowed to use our offhand, meaning that using shields is incredibly annoying and somewhat difficult, as we would have to swap between our weapon and shield with perfect timing. So I captured an unnecessarily aggressive humanoid swine to get my hands on some more arrows along with potions of fire resistance, and got myself out of the Nether. Since I had spawned in such an abysmal place, I decided to go for the exact same strategy as I did in my video, where I wasn't allowed to walk. I went off to another location to make a portal in hopes of ending up in a better spot, and rather luckily, this worked. So I trapped myself yet another aggressive swine man and went off in hopes of finding a nether fortress so that we could proceed with our previously mentioned master plan. And by some absolute miracle, I managed to find one reasonably close to our portal, which was rather surprising, as this game tends to do all in its power to screw me over. I then entered the fortress and noticed that there were several ways that I could get astronomically clapped, so I deployed as many safety measures as I could, in hopes of preventing that. But we had actually been quite unlucky with where the nether fortress generated, as a massive part of it was in a crimson forest, adding yet another bringer of clappings. So I proceeded to do everything in my power to take as many precautions as possible whilst navigating through the fortress. Whilst in this process, I managed to get my hands on a couple blaze rods, which was very epic, since I had been a very good, smart and talented young man. I had actually brought all I needed to set up my very own illegal home brewery. So I upgraded my potions of fire resistance and left. I have absolutely no idea why I did that, as the plan was to brew invisibility potions to make my life easier. And I still hadn't managed to get my hands on any nether wart, meaning that I had essentially wasted a blaze powder. But putting my impressive level of incompetence aside, I then made the absolutely abhorrent discovery that both of the blaze spawners were completely exposed, meaning that my life was going to be incredibly difficult. So I set my eyes on the prize and slithered my way into the treasure area of the fortress in the most cowardly and pathetic manner I've ever done. But this strategy worked, and we managed to get our hands on netherwort. So I started brewing our potions of invisibility. However, as I was brewing our bootleg happy juice, a blaze had made an appearance in the hallway whose wall we had hollowed out for our makeshift brewery. So I decided to try out our new potions and made the shocking discovery that they could still see me. To this day, I have absolutely no idea how that happened. But it did seem to work on my way back to where we entered the fortress, which was very strange. I then went on to gleefully scuttle my way back to the portal without a worry in the world, as we now didn't have to constantly worry about getting clapped by pretty much everything. I also killed the ghast, meaning that we now also had what we needed to make regeneration potions. However, even though we had made quite a bit of progress from this trip alone, my immense greed had yet to be satisfied, as we still didn't have enough blaze rods to make the eyes of Ender we would eventually need. So I had a quick look around in the nether in hopes of finding yet another fortress, but to absolutely no one's surprise, I didn't find one. I then thought that it might be a bad idea to continue bumbling my way through the nether and decided to make my way home to make some additional preparations. So I brewed up a bunch of potions and made my way back to the nether, but I rather quickly realized that we didn't have any potions of fire resistance. So I decided to kill some magma cubes, completely forgetting that we'll get plenty from piglins. And once I had made my way back to our base yet again to brew some potions of fire resistance, I continued our journey to find another fortress, during which I made sure to gather as much gold as possible to trade with piglins, as that's the only viable way for us to get arrows. This took a bit longer than I'd hoped, as I used up basically all of my invisibility potions I brought with me, but I did find one nonetheless, and rather frustratingly, it was really close to our portal, but we had gone in a massive circle. So I made my way home for a third time to replenish our potions and went back to the new fortress. I then set up 2 separate walls so that we could see any potential wither skeletons and not have them destroy us from behind. I then went on to collect a bunch of blaze rods in hopes of never having to set foot in the nether again, as it's probably the most dangerous place in the game. This went rather smoothly, as I had invisibility potions, potions of fire resistance, golden apples, as well as a bow and arrows. And after having collected more blaze rods than I would probably ever use, I decided to make my way back. However, unbeknownst to me, I had completely forgotten to reapply invisibility, and as I was about to leave, a skeleton decided to come and almost end my entire career, leaving me with 1 heart. But as I killed it, another skeleton decided to start harassing me as well, which killed me, as I apparently thought it was a good idea to open chat instead of switching to my shield. So there we have it. This little mini-series has come to an end. I am a bit upset at how I died, as it was indeed incredibly avoidable and caused by pure and utter incompetence, as there were several things that could have saved me in that situation. First being that I could simply have built the wall completely and not left a perfect entrance for skeletons to clap me. Second would be to simply reapply invisibility. Third being to have blocks on my hotbar, as that would have allowed me to block the entrance off for the second skeleton. And finally, I could also have changed the incredibly stupid and illogical hotkey for the chat to another hotkey instead of T, which is definitely something I'll do right now. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little mini-series, even though the ending was rather underwhelming. If you did enjoy it, and would like to see me attempt this challenge once more, please leave a like and comment to let me know. And if you have any other ideas for mini-series like this one, feel free to leave them in the comments. But anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in our potential next series or in our main hardcore world.